Hi, everyone. Welcome to this VCFA event, which is entitled Walt Whitman Songbook, Zoom Discussions with Musicians. My name is Craig Pallett, and I am the composer of the Walt Whitman Songbook. I live in Vermont in an actual Edward Hopper painting, this one right here. And I am a 2015 MFA graduate of VCFA. I wrote this entire songbook in February 2019. It was published on May 31st, Whitman's 200th birthday in the same year. The songbook contains 10 songs for voice and piano. 7 of the songs are part of his song cycle called A Song of the Rolling Earth, and the other 3 are individual poems. This began the project management producer role I had to play in order to collect the 10 vocal performances from 11 artists. I finally received the last performance in May 2020, just as the pandemic was in full force. It took a few more months to mix and master this album myself and released it in September 2020. I have designed these videos to be used as a backdrop for an eventual live performance with a large orchestra. Tonight, you're going to hear from 6 vocalists, also 3 great world-class studio musicians. They will be interviewed as well. Oh yes, and buy the actual songbook. It's available at all online bookstores and now many libraries. All audio recordings you hear tonight are on all streaming services. I would like to thank VCFA for asking me to present this material. I would like to thank all of the vocalists, all of the instrumentalists that played on this record. Please enjoy.
Whoever you are, motion and reflection are especially for you.
Hi, David. Hi, Don. It's great to see both of you. I'm so glad that you're here to participate in this VCFA event. And I just thought I'd ask the 2 of you my 4 questions that I ask everybody.
My name's Dawn Clement. I'm a pianist, vocalist, composer. I met Craig at VCFA back in 2013, 14, 15. I recently moved to Denver, and I teach at Metropolitan State University. I coordinate the jazz area. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, Craig.
Hi, my name is David Krieger. I play drums and percussion. I've known Craig since I was a junior in high school, and we were in my first band together, and we've done umpteen million projects since then. So this has been great, and this is one of the more unusual ones, actually. So thanks for having me.
Barely. I'm more familiar with other poets, but my sister is a poet, and I believe she probably showed me my first Whitman, but not exclusively familiar, or, it wasn't a daily part of my reading.
Me and Walt Whitman, I know the name Walt Whitman, but other than that, I was completely unfamiliar. So this has been my first venture into Walt Whitman.
First of all, I just want to say it was a pleasure to learn your piece. And that in itself was pretty different for me. I tend to play my own music a lot. And it's not as often that I get, assigned or given or asked to do a piece vocally. So that was also a different part of my process. And I definitely did use the piano to learn it. But it was different in that way of focusing just on my voice and how I was going to interpret and put that together. So I did some of the usual things that I normally do. I looked for patterns in your music that would help me recognize and hit the notes right and be able to anticipate when those were coming. And there were some, but it was definitely not a predictable piece of music. And so I also found myself looking for repeated intervals, phrases, where to take a breath. I made a little 1, 2, 3, 4 number system for myself so I could practice from different sections. But beyond that, poetry can be really cryptic to sing and to put to music. And so one of the challenges personally is finding a way to sing that like it's a song, and to give it meaning behind the lyrics that many people can relate to, so that as I'm internalizing the lyrics and singing it, I could imagine it from my perspective, from your perspective, from a person who's lost someone's perspective, right? So that it's relatable. And I think that is probably what I focused on most, was how to make it relatable, how to connect the phrases, and how to learn the notes. Might I add one more thing about your piece? There were a lot of moments where, and when we did this in the studio too, you said, well, you could just make something up there where there was a melisma or a room for the voice to improvise part of the line. And I think that really allowed the vocal part on that piece to be horn-like. So there was, there is a lyric, but there are also these beautiful spaces in the music, and I don't mean blank spaces, but room that allowed for there to be the voice to be like an instrument, like a horn.
For me, this one was a little different. I do a lot of this project I did programming wise. I'm a drummer, and I'm kind of always looking for the groove of things. And Craig used a lot of odd meters, which makes the groove a little elusive sometime. So, but to make it even stranger on this piece, for whatever reason, we got into this idea of having this be more of like a classical percussion ensemble, but still grooving. So this one, more than any other of the other pieces, I really went for actually making it playable by like an orchestral percussion section, though it would probably require 2 timpani players or whatever, but it would be challenging. But that was sort of the idea, to have it be this kind of organic live thing, but then it still grooves in the way that the drum set part would need to happen, but with no drum set.
This was the beginning. I didn't know it yet, but this was the beginning of so much vocal tracking for me. Wow. I've been doing it since.
Wow.
I invested in a nice mic, a couple nice interfaces, and being there with you and tracking with you was really helpful to have the composer there, right? Because we could talk about it as it was happening. Yeah. But also that process of not necessarily getting it perfect, but remembering each take, right? Well enough that, okay, that was intentional, so next time I'm going to go back and put this with it, right? Since that time, I don't know if I've gotten that much better at it, but I've been practicing it. That was really fun to do with you. And I think it's challenging to edit yourself in the moment like that. And to be able to go back and sing with yourself and remember what you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, Doc. I mean, anytime a project is a jumping off point for like, oh, I can kind of do this and I should do more of it,
Yeah, totally.
For me, like I've said before, I just love working on new music with people. In the case of Craig comes up with something, and to be able to help somebody realize, their music from wherever it's at and take it to that place where it's ready to be released and all that I just dig, In the case of us working all separate, that's a little more challenging because there's always this, I think this is a good idea. And you you try to get inside the head of what you think where it's at and, and see if it works. In this case, sad to say, I didn't have your vocal. Other ones I did. But it's just, you kind of do it and hope the next person then makes it all work. And it was very good. It was really good. The vocal stuff was great, by the way. So.
Whoever you are, motion and reflection are especially for you. The divine ship sails the divine sea for you. She for whom the earth is solid and liquid. You are he or she for whom the sun and moon hang in the sky. For none more than you are the present and the past. For none more and comes back most to him. The murderess to the murderer and comes back most to him. The theft is to the thief and comes back most to him. The love is to the lover and comes back most to him. The gift is to the giver and comes back most to him. It cannot fail. The oration is to the orator. The acting is to the actor and actress, not to the audience. No man understands any greatness or goodness but his own, or the indication of his own.
Hi, Margie. Hi, Garrett. How are things? It's great to see you.
I'm Margie. I go by Marjorie Halloran in my professional life. I am a choral composer and songwriter, and I'm living in Austin, Texas right now, mostly. I don't know how much introduction I need. I'm not that exciting.
Humbug. All right, I'm Garrett Steele. I am a copywriter and a composer, mostly for media, video games, and things like that. Currently based out of Arkansas, where I live with my wife and 2 dogs and a cat. I don't know. That's me.
Familiar, yes. I can't say that I consider myself to be a Whitman expert. I am afraid I am one of the millions of people out there who studied Leaves of Grass in high school and never really thought twice about Mr. Whitman since then. I have always enjoyed his poetry, but I can't say that I am any sort of knowledgeable Whitman scholar or anything.
You would think I would be more in depth on Whitman than I am, because I'm surrounded by people who are like super into folks who were close to Whitman. Like my dad is ardent about conservation, and was a huge fan of John Muir, really interested in like the history of the national parks and all that. My wife was really interested in kind of the history of like the American intellectual tradition, and the transcendentalists obviously are like a huge part of that. But like she was always more into Thoreau. So like I'm aware of Whitman kind of through the way his life and his work intersected with these other people, like friends and family are super into. But I mean, again, like it's a really cursory knowledge, before digging into this. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I should be more Whitman savvy than I am.
Yeah, we recorded in a dorm room, and getting the setup to be the right balance of the mic can hear me, but the room is so small that we can't sit over here, and here's the cables going through this teeny tiny little dorm, was somewhat of an adventure. I think I had to be sitting for most of the takes because the mic wasn't angled properly. I don't remember what it was. Well, I've never prided myself on being exceptional with rhythm necessarily. So for a piece like this that is very reliant on rhythm, I found myself having to dig into a lot of like almost like elementary music theory, where I'm going, okay, like 3 + 2 + 2 + 2 + 3, and tapping my leg to make sure that I'm getting the right beat. That was more of a challenge than I anticipated because of the it's not an irregular, I can't remember is it 9/8? And I spent so many times going 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, trying to keep up with that. That was the biggest challenge for me. And once it clicked. Getting to that point, that was definitely, that kind of eclipsed all other techniques that I might have used. I mean, I'm a singer. I try to sing with my best singing technique whenever possible. I went a little more pop than classical for this one. Stylistically, I thought it was appropriate, but definitely keeping track of the rhythms and where my entrances were because of the kind of a disjointed sensation was my biggest sort of, I don't want to say issue because it wasn't an issue, and it was fun, but it was definitely, it took a minute to get it to settle.
I mean, I had a similar experience with Margie in that it was a little bit of a tough nut to crack at first. When we first got your email and you said, oh, well, I want y'all to do that Simon and Garfunkel thing you do that's so lovely. And it was one of the sweetest things I think anyone has ever said to us. And then I got the music in and the melody was like leaping all over the place. And I was like, how are we going to do this?
And I was like, I'm taking melody, you're on your own, bud.
Yeah, no, that's what well, I think the melody was more in your range anyway.
Yeah.
And then I think there was a night that you came over and we tried to hash it out in person. And then I don't know, interface wasn't on or something happened with the recording.
Oh yeah, it didn't record. I forgot about that.
Yeah, after we spent like 3 hours
we
on
worked
it.
so hard on it and it didn't even record. I forgot about that.
So I spent a little while kind of feeling like I was spinning my wheels on it. I got your vocals in around the same time. Craig, I think, kind of finally like wrote out a line. I didn't want to impose. I maybe should have just asked for that from the beginning, because the second I heard what Craig was hearing and what Craig was able to kind of draw out of you in that like dorm room recording, everything clicked into place. It really was just a moment of sudden epiphany where it was like, I went from feeling like I had no way in to feeling like it was the most natural thing in the world.
This song seems, I just finished doing a video of it, and it seems really simple, but I know it's like really hard. It's like really complicated.
It's deceptively difficult.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that speaks to your care in composing it, that it can have that much going on behind the scenes, and then when you have it running, it's just like this little groove.
Well, and Garrett's the master of harmony anyway, so that helped. That's getting very existential. I saw this question and I've been trying to think like, what were my takeaways? And at first I was thinking, well, I don't know. I was helping out my friend. I have this colleague who's a very talented composer, fellow alum of this program that we all love so dearly. And I like to sing. I want to help out. I want to be part of this cool project. Really, the more I dug into it, the more I kind of grooved on the sort of all the questioning that happens at the end of this poem. What is creation? What will satisfy the soul? What is God? Sort of a thing. I really, I started to make these connections kind of with the rhythm thing that we were talking about. Just the uncertainty, the movement of that rhythm, and it was never smooth. And these questions are not smooth. They're not easy questions.
It's like the lyrics are keeping you off your feet existentially, and then the rhythm is kind of keeping you off of your feet, like internally, physically. I'm not rooted in tapping my feet, and I am not rooted in my soul, and I don't know what's happening.
Yeah. It's kind of, it's almost a metaphor for the human condition. You don't know what you're doing, and the older you get, the more you realize that you know nothing, and your parents knew nothing, and everyone's making it up as they go along. It really, that kind of stuck with me, the way that you set these, this text to feel like that, to feel like you're having sort of this existential crisis musically and spiritually. I don't know if that's a takeaway necessarily. I don't know how that's changed my life per se, but I thought it was very effective, and it did make me go like, this is a cool project. There's more levels than I initially thought. That was way cool. And also, I just hadn't studied Whitman much. This is a neat text.
I mean, there was an element of engaging with the text, like Margie said, but I think also just engaging with the people around me, because I have a tendency to write myself off in a group of talented people such as this one as either the court jester or the den mother, and assume it's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe I'm fun to have around, but I'm not a musician like these people are. Yeah, see, and I see you shaking your head, and I appreciate that. That means a lot, because it's really this kind of deep-seated, insidious thing that will creep in. And so at the time, you reached out to us, I was kind of overwhelmed in several arenas of my life. And then you got in touch about being part of this. It kind of helped resolve a little bit of that existential crisis of my own. It's just like you do belong among these colleagues. You do have a place here, or at the very least, they're willing to act like you do.
Well, if anyone's the imposter here, it's clearly me. So do not have anything to worry about.
Will satisfy the soul, except to walk free and oh no, superior. What do you suppose I would intimate to you in 100 ways? But that man or woman is as good as God. you suppose I would intimate to you in 100 ways? But that man or woman is as good as God. I swear the earth shall surely be complete to him or her.
That's not creepy.
Hi, my name is David Krieger. I played drums and percussion. I've played with Don Ellis and Burt Bacharach and other people.
Hi, I'm Mario Inchausti. I did the vocals on this track. I've performed or recorded with Gladys Knight and Tavares and Shakira. We've never actually met Craig, but we are alumni of the same music program in Vermont.
I'm Leon Gaer, your friendly neighborhood bass player, originally from Los Angeles and now living in Sydney, Australia. And I've known David and Craig since the mid-'70s. And it was a pleasure to work on this project.
Hi, I'm Steve Bartek, guitarist, and I've played with David and Craig and Leon since I graduated high school almost. And so it was really wonderful to be asked to work on this project. Hearing the vocal just blew me away. That it was so much fun to try to support the vocal playing it.
My familiarity with Whitman was very minuscule. I know who he was. I've never really read Whitman. In the scope of a musician for a project like this, I don't know that it really makes that much difference because I'm here to kind of support the composer's vision, and it's up to the composer to have that relationship with the text. And I really wouldn't want to second guess all that. I just try to make the music sound better. So, but no, my loss. I've never really read Walt Whitman.
Well, actually, that was the core of my some of my do I want to say issue? I focused a lot on phrasing, the words and the way they would make sense together. But the way they were written rhythmically was kind of different. There'd be dangling fragments for the tongue of the earth, And so I read it out loud a lot in order to be able to familiarize myself with the phrasing, and then going back and applying it to the text, the melody was really interesting. And I have more to say about that, but I can wait for the next question. I don't want to give it all away. Yes, I've read Whitman and saw Leave Brass, and I was a particular fan of the self as epic hero. So I ran with that for 5 years, and I was pretty insufferable. I got over it.
No, I had not. I had heard of Walt Whitman, but I hadn't read it. It did prompt me, though, to go out and search it out and look at some of his poems. And yes, I love it now, but I didn't know anything about it before then.
So much like some of the other ones, I had read Whitman when I was much younger and didn't obsess on it. And again, this project made me go out and buy a Walt Whitman book. And again, I didn't obsess on it because I didn't get very far through it. Dave said, the important thing is what we had to work with, the split phrasing and stuff of how you set this poem was really a challenge and a joy to work on. So it kind of exposed the Walt Whitman poem in a different way than if you would just read it. From rhythmically what you did to it, it didn't seem to follow exactly how it laid on the page, which is what made it more exciting to interpret. That covers the next question too, right? I'm exempt.
I thought about this. I worked on a few pieces for this, and all of them do mixed meters. And this one actually was the most basic, and actually required the most basic of the percussion part. It was basically just a drum set part, and we had 2 grooves. We had 6/8, and we had 7/8. And the shift between the two of them just happened like boom. And I couldn't figure out any way of making that go away or making that less than that. Kind of really wanted to see if there was a way of at least subtly tying the two things together, the 6/8 and the 7/8. So I left the bass drum and the snare drum doing the 2 various grooves, the 6/8 and the 7/8. But the 8th note part, the hi-hat, the 4 tuned ride cymbals, and the tabla part, all playing 7/8 all the time, over the 6/8 and also over the 7/8. In a way that hopefully wasn't obvious, and probably isn't obvious. I can hardly find it on the record. I think it kind of helped, at least for me, it made the phrase seem longer. Instead of just being a 6/8 bar, we just got a longer phrase without me doing anything to break the phrases up. And that also made sense with the rest of the project, that I hear all these kind of long musical phrases, not chopped up little 4-bar sections. So that was my one weird thing. That, of course, made it way harder to play and way harder to disguise that it was hard to play. That was the point, was to try to make that be subtle so nobody noticed it. And I kind of don't think anybody even did. So there you go.
Yeah, like I said, I really I tried to read it over and over again. And then, as Steve mentioned, having the phrases chopped up like that and made you reapproach it, or made me reapproach it, rather. And I remember thinking too, when I first heard it, for some reason I got like a raga feel to it, like a really mesmerizing, hypnotic kind of thing. I mean, not really Indian, but the mood of it. And so I thought, well, then maybe that's what I need to do with the vocal, is try to fit it in perfectly. Clearly, the rhythm is really important, so I wasn't going to stylize it much. Or at all. I just wanted to make sure that every word, because it is about a poem, was distinct, heard. And that was really how I approached the whole thing.
Well, because we were doing it not together, but individually at our home studios, I did what I always do. I spent 2 or 3 times listening to it without playing, just listening and looking at the music you sent and just thinking about what I'm going to do and planning it before I had a go at it. And loved Mario's vocals and went with his vocals on the bass line a couple of times, where I thought it fit the text and also musically. Other than that, and I didn't change much of what you wrote, except a few times I'd depart from your written line, but pretty much most of the time what you wrote just fit perfectly. And so I just stayed with it.
I was presented with all their work already, so it was really more enjoyable than when I first got the file where it was all synths. But what I ended up doing was kind of looking at all the synth parts and figuring out, oh, these will sound better on a guitar, doing something different. Kind of replaced and doubled some of the stuff that you already had. I didn't add anything, of course. And part of the joy of it, once I figured out it was too fast to really play, I looked at a lot of it as Hocket. So I could do left, right in the harmonics that give some spatial motion to stuff that was just like this on the demo. And that was really fun to try to figure out, well, where can which lines can I do this to? And I had exactly the opposite problem of Dave. It's like, well, okay, I've done this. It's got to go somewhere else. What can I introduce that isn't so foreign, but takes it somewhere else? So adding some lower guitars, because most of it was kind of high before that, to get the bridge, what I was calling the bridge, to move somewhere else. And the same with the descending figures that show up, to make them slightly, so they slide a little. They do something that the other guitars aren't doing.
Guys, doesn't it affect you greatly which order we get stuff in? I mean, as Steve alluded to.
Oh yeah. When I first got it, I was going, oh, what am I going to do with this? And then I go, oh, a drum part. Okay, now it feels like something more. And as soon as Leon's bass was on it, it was like, oh, that's where this is going.
Yeah, I'm always pitching like crazy to be last. I mean, I'll even go so far to do it for real, and then now give it back to me again, and now I can do it again for real, because I want to hear what's, this is one of the rare times I haven't had your guitars, and I'm just going, oh, I don't feel good about this. So I was able to play with Mario and Leon, and that was, man, I got to have something besides just the, or I'll give you a rough track, but I get to have another pass at this later on.
It is a challenge because as the rhythm section, when we're tracking together, we can discuss before we start recording. Look, I'll fill in this bar, but you fill in that bar, and we do it on the fly. Yes,
without even discussion. We just all these changes that you just know.
Yeah.
So when I was doing my bass part, what I did was picked a few spots where I did some fills and stuff, but then the rest of it left it intentionally completely blank. And Steve, of course, jumped right on that and no, he properly. No, he jumped on it and properly filled where I didn't, and and didn't fill where I did, and so I think it worked out really well on this track. Yeah.
The other thing, I avoided too much distortion. It felt like it should be a clean, sparkling timbre, and I do appreciate being last.
I think the vocalists, and particularly Mario, did a phenomenal job negotiating these rhythmic weirdnesses and not making them sound uncomfortable.
Right.
And even including what you did was like just actually having to make the written thing be believable, and that's what you intended and everything else, because if not, the structure gets too confusing if there's too much moving around.
That was the scary thing about hearing Mario's vocal first, is because it doesn't sound like it's an odd time. It sounds natural.
Yeah.
And then you look at the page and go, oh, hell. That's not what it is.
That's exactly the thought. I wanted to be really precise and not take up any more room than was allotted, which means not a whole lot of stylizing. Do it as written.
Yeah. But in doing that, it came out stylistically satisfying.
I did repeat the phrases over and over so that I could enunciate a little better.
As I did with my guitar parts.
Just out of curiosity, what I use Digital Performer, and Dave, you use Logic. What did everybody else use?
Pro Tools.
And the whole project's in Logic.
Mario?
I'm sorry, I spoke over Craig. You used Logic. I used Reason, Propeller Head's Reason.
Everybody used a different one.
I love that.
Oh, I think we've all talked about that, so we can go, right?
My main takeaway is just the same as it is with all these sort of projects. It's like I just love interpreting, music of guys that have come up with new stuff. I mean, that's just the way it is for most projects with me. And then with Craig, it's really interesting because I've been doing this with him forever and ever, and he keeps growing and changing as a composer. And it's always fun to figure out, how am I going to fit into that? And how can I make him bring the music to life, and share it with the world. And that's why I do this. And that's why it's fun. So that's why I take away from it and just look forward to the next one.
Yeah, there's a lot of that with me too. It's completely different from anything I usually work with, and so it's fun to do that. It's fun to co-interpret something like that in new ways and look at it that way. And Walt Whitman as a musical meditation really was kind of interesting, and I really enjoyed each iteration making it just that much better. So, I'd hear something and, now there's drums attached. Well, that's great. This is awesome. I love it. And then there's bass, and it's even better, and so on until it's, this finished thing that was gorgeous. The guitars are beautiful.
I guess my main takeaway is pretty much the same as everyone else's that I've heard so far. And that is, I just really enjoyed collaborating on it. We've all done these kind of projects before where we have to collaborate and do our own parts at our own studios. Pleasure for me in this one is everybody's got such large ears. Everybody listened, didn't just sometimes when you do something like this, everybody's just going for jazz history all at once. And it just gets too confusing. As Craig, as you said earlier, it is a very clean track, and there's just moments where it sparkles musically. It's just perfect. And so thumbs up to everybody that played on it.
My takeaway on the project is mostly a little different because it's a personal takeaway. The project gave me the challenge of playing what's on the page and trying to make it do something that I liked, as opposed to previous projects with Craig were like, oh, here's something, play something over it, do something else. And this one was like, okay, I'm going to follow what's there because it doesn't have room for that to make it be what it's supposed to be. The sad thing about it, it reminded me how much I miss playing with a live rhythm section or playing with live things. All the projects these past months have been like this. And so it was a joy to work on. And afterwards it was like, damn, I wish that I could be playing with other musicians.
I swear the earth shall surely be complete to him or her who shall be complete. The earth remains jagged and broken only to him or her who remains jagged and broken. I swear there is no greatness or power that does not emulate those of the earth. There can be no theory of any account unless it corroborate the theory of the earth. No politics on religion, behavior or whatnot is of account unless it compare with the amplitude of the earth. Unless it face the exactness, vitality, impartiality, rectitude of the earth. I swear I began to see love with sweeter spasms than that which responds. Love, it is that which contains itself, which never invites and never refuses. I swear I began to see little or nothing inaudible words. All merges toward the presentation of the unspoken meanings of the earth. Toward him who sings the songs of the body and of the truths of the earth. Who makes the dictionaries of words that print cannot touch? I swear I see what is better than to tell the best. It is always to leave the best untold. Find I cannot, my tongue dumb man. The best of the earth cannot be told anyhow, or any is best. It is not what you anticipated. It is cheaper, easier, nearer. Things are not dismissed from the places they held before. The earth is just as positive and direct as it was before. Facts, religions, improvements, politics, trades are as real as before. But the soul is also real. It too is positive and direct. No reasoning, no proof has established it. Undeniable growth has established it.
Hey, Philip, how's it going?
It's going great. How are you? Yeah, so I'm Philip Riegle. I graduated from the music composition program at VCFA, and I'm also a choral conductor and music educator in the Chicagoland area. Familiar to the extent of, studying his poetry in random literature courses and coming across his poetry in kind of the, the zeitgeist, I guess, but nothing too intense.
Right.
When performing poetry, I come at it the same way I would come as you as a composer. And as a composer would set poetry, you want to research the poet and the poem and really get into it before you even think about text setting. And that's what I would do as a performer as well. So I would go online and research the poet. And then I like to find scholarly articles and reviews about the poem in particular, just to get a better sense of the meaning and everything I need to convey. With art songs and poetry specifically in art songs, it's a little more challenging because it's not like a theatrical production where you're conveying a scene necessarily. So it's kind of like poetry reading essentially. So I did a lot of that to get ready. And as far as recording goes, I don't have a ton of experience with digital recording, and I really wanted to do right by you in this process. So I made sure that I took everything I could get. I sent you drafts and everything. I kind of trusted your ear. I also don't like hearing myself sing. So I like to send it to you and say, what do you think? Does this work? Because I certainly don't enjoy listening to myself. A lot of singers have that thing. And as far as the vocal aspect goes, I was really, really interested in conveying this piece the second I heard it, and with the chanting that goes along underneath it. This is a amelioration in case, we don't have an order or anything. I immediately got the sense that it was a meditation on this text, and I think it really fits the poetry really, really well with what we perceive Whitman to try to convey. And I think that the way the piece worked out as a kind of meditation or chant really, really did a lot for the piece and the whole concept of amelioration.
Well, actually, we're singing a duet at the beginning because I'm singing all the bass drones, right? So you got my droney voice. And actually, I even did a take of this where I sang the song, but I rapidly deleted it. I'm so happy that you sang this tune because it's, you did a great job on it. And it was also really last minute. I had been waiting on somebody else for a year, and the fact that you took the time to do this. And actually, you're completely right. It's like a Buddhist chant at the bottom.
It is.
I think even in the instructions, I just say, sing these notes as low as possible.
Well, and it totally works because the whole poem talks about how, the earth is going to do what the earth is going to do.
Right.
And you just need to accept it.
Right.
And that's why I think it totally works with, things build. There's definitely intensity. There's definitely drama in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Especially when at that tempo increase about halfway through. So that gives it this motion, which is great. So it's not, it's certainly not static.
Right.
Well, I tell you what, my experience obviously was a lot different than I think most of the other people. Obviously, you did a lot of this remotely anyway. But it was like a little bit of a boost. COVID hit, and the musical I was directing in my school, we had to cancel our second show. And then the next week we were done. And then, so we were home, and it was rough. And then you reached out with this project. And I just thought, oh, how cool. Like, let's do something right now.
Oh, cool.
So, so it kind of catapulted me a bit. So then I ended up starting to do more digital scoring and recording after your project. And it kind of prepped me. And then I did a winter album, like a charity album in December, and used everything I learned from recording yours to record mine. And
Great.
So, which was a new experience. I don't do a lot of recording.
Right.
So it was really a really cool learning experience. And it was nice to just be able to make something,
Yeah.
We were done. I bought this.
Oh, yeah?
I got it. I got the songbook. This is, it's an art songbook. College students could absolutely use this for voice to get a fresh set of art songs.
Well, thank you, Philip.
No, that's exactly where I would send it to, is get it out in the college ring. Cause this is the kind of thing that, people in performance majors in voice performance would absolutely latch on to.
Is one of the earth's words. The earth neither lags nor hastens. It has all attributes, growths, effects, latent in itself. From the jump, it is not half beautiful, only defects and excrescences show, just as much as perfection show. Does not withhold. It is generous enough. The truths of the earth continually wait. They are not so concealed either. They are calm, subtle, transmissible by print. themselves willingly, conveying a sentiment and invitation. I utter and utter, I speak not, yet if you hear me, not of what avail am I to you? To better lacking these, what avail am I? A cushy, will you rot your own fruit in yourself there? Will you squat and stifle there?
The beach at night alone.
Hi, Peter. Hi, Jessica. Great to see both of you.
Great to see you.
Great to be here.
I have 4 questions. Yeah, go ahead and please introduce yourself.
My name is Peter Spencer. I'm a guitarist, a songwriter, a singer. I got my degree at VCFA in 2013. Glad to be here.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Muñiz-Collado. I am a percussionist and drummer. Got a lot more into music production lately, so I guess more on that producer beat making route, which fits being a drummer, but it's all good. I'm from Miami, Florida, and I graduated from VCFA in 2014. And I was very fortunate to share classrooms and lunchtime and walks with Peter. So that was fun. And Craig too. We were all there at the same time.
I have to say, Jessica, you were a big help to one of my projects. You recommended a book of drum grooves that I hadn't heard of before, and it was a big help. So, and I don't know if I've ever thanked you for that. So thanks.
Oh, Peter. Well, thank you. I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, I was. I read a fair amount of his poems when I was a teenager, in particular. I read The Leaves of Grass, When Violets Last in the Dooryard Grew. I almost said groomed. I don't know where that came from. It really spoke to me then. I think a lot of teenagers tend to identify with outsiders, and his work, even though his work had that feeling of being from an outsider, even though I didn't know his circumstances or really anything about his life, but that's what I really responded to in him.
Short answer is no. That is the truth. I think you can see that I was a much later generation by birth, so Walt Whitman wasn't, I knew of the name, so when you did ask, I was like, okay, I know who he is, not to be confused with the other Walt, but it's this idea of, okay, I guess I should educate myself a little more about this before I just jump into this ignorantly. But so no, I'm embarrassed to say I did not know much about him.
I'm embarrassed to say that Jessica apparently thinks I was alive when Whitman was alive.
No. I never said that. You might have to edit that out, Craig.
In a way, when I saw the score, it was almost as if it was not going to repair a lot of preparation, because I saw that there were a lot of these very interesting syncopations there that by myself I just wasn't going to be able to practice. I just wasn't going to be able to count my way through that. Now, Jessica probably could just fine because she's a great drummer. But I could see that I was going to need, when we finally got together, to go over it phrase by phrase and work the dynamics in there. And so in a way, those kinds of decisions we're going to have to wait until Craig and I were sitting down together and actually building the piece together.
I mean, I think it was so, you tell me in the emails and on our conversation, you could just, here's a guide, percussion, but here's a score, but you should just do what you want to do with it. But I think it was already so structured, not in a bad way, but just so distinct with like phrasing and what you wanted and emphasis in certain areas. And like you had the little tempo changes and things like that. And then hearing Peter's part with it, I was like, well, I don't want to do too much because I don't want to overpower his message, like what he's singing, he's trying to get across. So for me, it was just really embracing that. And I was like, well, how can I just make this 3-beat pattern kind of keep the listener engaged, without repeating the same thing over and over again. So I knew already I didn't want to go with heavy drums. I wanted to keep it also with the idea, even at the time I had to go and look at what the poem actually was, but just by the title, I was like, I don't feel heavy drumming, like a heavy drum set on a beach at night alone. What would someone have alone with them? And so that's why I kind of went with the cajon and just kind of kept it light and a shaker. I was like, that's it, just kind of keep it simple. But yeah, that was kind of really for me. I was like, I just want to be in the background, kind of have my presence felt more rather than heard, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Takeaway, mushu pork with 4 pancakes, please. Very interesting to hear that Jessica had much the same reaction as I did. I've got a great big voice. I'm a blues singer. And I found myself putting a lot more air into my vocal production, singing softly to maybe less softly, but never hard, never loud, never overt. And I would like to think that that was a conscious decision on my part, but I don't think it was. I think it was just me responding to the nature of the music. And it's interesting to hear Jessica say that she sort of had the same response. It works great as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, yeah, I have a few. Number one, it got me into realizing a little bit more about Walt Whitman. Like, okay, let me look into this a little more. Number two, when you asked if I can contribute to the project, and you said Peter was going to be on it, I was like, yeah. I was like, this is the second time Peter and I have, collaborated on something together like that, which I think it's great. So maybe the third time we do it, it'll be like the award-winning album, Peter. We got to just do something.
I remember that night in Melissa's where you were playing drums and I was playing guitar. We actually had a pretty hot band going there that night.
We had there, and then, oh, that's right. Actually, I forgot about Sweet Melissa's. I was thinking about Trumpets Jazz Club when I was playing your sets back in New Jersey.
That's the one that I forgot. So
okay,
between
so
the two of us.
There we go. So Peter and I have a history. But it was, I want to thank you, Craig, for asking, me to come along with this one song, because in addition to my production and what I do as a composer, I do a lot of music consulting. and music reviews, and I have a company named Nizco Music. With this, I used it as an example, not only to my clients, but even to my own students in higher ed, where I can say, don't put yourself in a box and thinking that composition only belongs to this particular outlet, like an orchestra in this case. You know, it's, you grab something that, you know, has some history to it, like Walt Whitman, and then you went and just kind of reached out to your network, which again is important to establish that, and you did it well. And I think you really go from East to West Coast in the performers. There's probably somebody in every time zone on your album.
Leon Gaer he'll be on the broadcast. He's in Sydney, Australia. So
look at that. So, I mean, and that's such a great example. And that for me was a takeaway that I share with other people. It's like, look, he took poems and made them into songs and created a songbook. And now it's, you know, he was able to, if we look on, you know, when we talk about monetizing, I mean, you're doing that. You have the actual recording, you have the actual print, and now you're having these platforms of sharing your music here in VCFA and sharing the videos wherever you want elsewhere. So it's just a great example of taking something that maybe people don't really think about too much and really capitalizing off it. So kudos to you.
On the beach at night, alone, as the old mother sways her to and fro, singing her husky song. As I watch the bright stars shining, I think a thought of the clef of the universes and of the future. Vast similitude interlocks all spheres, grown, ungrown, small, large, suns, moons, planet. Distances of place, however wide, all distances of time, all inanimate forms. Souls, all living bodies, though they be ever different or in different worlds, all gaseous, watery, vegetable, mineral processes, the fishes, the brutes, all nations, colors, barbarisms, civilizations, languages, all identities that have existed or may exist on this globe or any globe.
the past, present, future. This vast similitude spans them and always has spanned and forever span them and compactly hold and enclose them.